What kind of a sick school is this? Hmm?
Picture this. It's 2003. You walk into a movie theater not really knowing what to expect. Maybe you've seen the trailer, a wild, curly-haired Jack Black screaming about rock and roll while a bunch of 10-year-olds look at him like he's lost his mind. You sit down. The opening guitar riff kicks in, and within about 4 minutes, you are completely, totally, hopelessly hooked. That was the experience of millions of people who watched School of Rock for the very first time. And more than 2 decades later, that film has not lost a single drop of its magic. It still makes people laugh. It still gives them goosebumps during the Battle of the Bands finale. And it still makes adults everywhere secretly wish they had a substitute teacher as unhinged and brilliant as Dewey Finn. But here's the thing about School of Rock that most people don't realize. As fun and effortless as it looks on screen, the story behind the making of that film is absolutely wild. There are layers to this movie. Facts, decisions, accidents, and behind-the-scenes moments that most fans have never heard. Moments that explain why this movie hits different from every other family comedy ever made. So today, we are pulling back the curtain. We're going deep into the history, the production, the people, and the legacy of this one-of-a-kind film. Whether you've seen School of Rock a dozen times or you're just discovering it for the first time, these 15 insane facts are going to completely change the way you think about it. Let's rock! Most people know that School of Rock was directed by Richard Linklater, the Texas-born filmmaker who had already built an incredible reputation with films like Dazed and Confused and the Before Sunrise series. And Linklater's fingerprints all over School of Rock. The loose, naturalistic energy, the way conversations feel spontaneous, the genuine warmth he draws out of every single performance. It fits him perfectly. But what most fans don't know is that Linklater almost didn't make this movie at all. When the script by Mike White first started circulating in Hollywood, it was considered a hot property, a funny, heartfelt, commercially appealing story that several studios and filmmakers wanted to get their hands on. There were early discussions about attaching directors who had more experience in mainstream studio comedies, people whose work was much more polished and conventional than Linklater's. And that right there would have been a disaster. Because the thing that makes School of Rock feel alive is precisely the fact that it doesn't feel like a typical studio comedy. There are no cheap jokes that insult the audience's intelligence. There's no lazy slapstick thrown in to pad out the runtime. Instead, the film breathes. It lets its characters have real moments. It trusts the audience to feel things without being told how to feel. That is 100% the Linklater approach. And it's what turned a fun premise into something genuinely enduring. When Linklater came aboard, he made it clear from the beginning that he wanted the music to be real, the performances to be authentic, and the emotional core of the story to be treated with respect. The studio had to trust him, and thankfully they did. The result was one of the most critically and commercially successful films of 2003. But it could have gone a very different way. Here is something that sounds almost too perfect to be true, but is completely factual. The character of Dewey Finn did not exist before Jack Black. Screenwriter Mike White didn't sit down one day with a fully formed character in his head and then go looking for an actor to fill the role. It worked the other way around entirely. White wrote the script specifically because of Jack Black, tailoring every single beat of the character to match what Jack Black naturally was. By 2003, Jack Black was already a beloved figure in comedy and music circles. His band Tenacious D had developed a fierce cult following. His role in Cameron Crowe's High Fidelity had shown everyone that he could be hilarious and somehow emotionally resonant at the same time. And his particular brand of full-body, zero-filter, completely unhinged comic energy was unlike anything else in Hollywood. Mike White looked at all of that and thought, what if we wrote a character who was essentially Jack Black turned up to 11? A man who loves rock music with every fiber of his being, who has absolutely no filter, who is simultaneously one of the most irresponsible adults on the planet and one of the most genuinely inspiring people you've ever met. That became Dewey Finn. And because the character was designed from the ground up to match Jack Black's real personality and real talents, something magical happened on screen. Dewey never feels like a character Jack Black is playing. He feels like a man Jack Black simply is. That naturalness, that sense of complete authenticity, is one of the main reasons the film works so well even after all these years. You never once catch Jack Black acting, and that's because the role was built around what he already was. When most people think about children in Hollywood films, they picture quick shoots, simplified schedules, and a whole lot of movie magic used to make it look like the kids can do things they definitely cannot. School of Rock threw that entire playbook in the trash. Director Richard Linklater was absolutely committed to one non-negotiable rule: the music would be real. Not sampled, not performed by professional session musicians and dubbed over. Real. Which meant that the children cast in the film, most of whom was selected partly for personality and acting ability rather than existing musical skill, had to actually learn their instruments from scratch. Weeks before filming began, the young cast was enrolled in an intensive music training program. Professional coaches worked with them daily on fundamentals. Guitar students learned chords, scales, and basic theory. The drummer worked on timing, fills, and the physical stamina required to perform full songs without breaking down. Keyboard players tackled both melody and rhythm. Vocalists built their range and their confidence performing in front of groups. And here is the part that takes it from impressive to genuinely remarkable. The training didn't stop at individual instruments. The kids had to learn how to play together as a band. That means listening to each other, adjusting tempo, responding to what another player is doing in real time. That is an advanced skill that takes professional musicians years to develop. These were children doing it in a matter of weeks. By the time cameras rolled, the young cast could genuinely perform. And throughout filming, live performances were used wherever the director felt it was possible. That's why the music in School of Rock feels so alive. Because it was alive. Every note you hear had a real kid playing it. In the moment, on set, for real. If you know anything about the music industry, you know that Led Zeppelin does not mess around when it comes to licensing their music. The band, and their representatives, have historically been among the most selective and protective of any major act in rock history. Countless filmmakers have approached them over the decades hoping to use a Led Zeppelin track, and the answer has almost always been no. So when the School of Rock production team decided they wanted to use a genuine Led Zeppelin track in the film, they were essentially setting themselves up for rejection before they even picked up the phone. This was not a band that casually handed out licenses for their songs to comedy films. The risk of their music being used in a way that felt disrespectful or cheapening was something they took extremely seriously. The production team knew all of this, and they also knew that having the real thing in the film was important. There's a specific scene that required the unmistakable power of a genuine Led Zeppelin song. Not a knockoff, not a tribute, not something that sounded like them. The real deal. So they went to work making their case. The approach was rooted in genuine respect. The team communicated clearly that the film honored rock music rather than mocking it. They emphasized that the use of the song was tied to a moment of real emotional power, children genuinely connecting with the legacy of great rock and roll. They made it clear that the music would be treated with care and reverence, even within the context of a comedy. Remarkably, it worked. Led Zeppelin said yes. And that approval, earned through patience, persistence, and a genuine love of the music, gave School of Rock one of its most electric moments. There's a reason that scene still gives people chills today. It's because the music that underpins it is the real thing. There's a version of School of Rock where Jack Black showed up on set, said his lines, did his thing, and left it to the director and music coaches to handle everything else. That version of the film would have been fine. It might have been pretty good, even. But Jack Black is not that kind of performer. And the film he helped create is not that kind of movie. During the weeks of pre-production rehearsals, Jack Black didn't simply practice his own scenes. He embedded himself with the young cast and became, in every real and meaningful sense, their actual band leader. He attended their instrument sessions. He played with them. He jammed with them. He pushed them. He cracked jokes that made them laugh and relax and stop being scared of making mistakes. He created an atmosphere where creativity and risk-taking felt safe. His background in music, built through years of performing with Tenacious D, meant he could offer real guidance. He could hear when someone's timing was off and articulate why. He could demonstrate guitar techniques rather than just describing them. He understood what it felt like to perform live in front of an audience and tried to prepare the kids for that specific kind of nervousness and energy. The result of all that time together was a band dynamic that felt completely genuine by the time filming began. The relationship between Dewey Finn and his students doesn't feel acted because in many ways it wasn't. Jack Black had genuinely invested in those kids, and they had genuinely bonded with him. That's the electricity you feel every time they're in a room together. Mike White's screenplay for School of Rock is widely regarded as one of the sharper comedy scripts of the early 2000s. It's tight, it's funny, and it has a genuine emotional architecture that carries the story forward with momentum. But when Richard Linklater got on set, particularly for the classroom scenes, he made a decision that changed everything. He told the cast to go off book. Not completely. The structure was always there. The scenes had purposes, beats, things that needed to happen for the story to work. But within that structure, Linklater opened the door wide for improvisation. He wanted to see what would happen if Jack Black, a born improviser with incredible instincts, was let loose in a room full of kids who were starting to genuinely feel comfortable around him. What happened was extraordinary. Jack Black would start a scene and then take it somewhere unexpected. He'd invent a bit of musical instruction that wasn't in the script. He'd react to something one of the kids did in a completely spontaneous way that was funnier than anything planned. And because the child actors had spent weeks bonding with him, they responded naturally. They didn't freeze up. They played along. They pushed back. They created. Some of the film's most quoted and beloved moments came directly from this process. Things that feel scripted to a precision actually happened in the moment. Lines that seemed too perfectly calibrated to be off the cuff were genuinely made up on the day. The classroom in School of Rock feels like the most alive classroom in movie history, partly because it actually was. Things were really happening in that room that nobody had planned. When a film features a character who is supposed to be a skilled musician, there are really two paths available. You can hire a professional musician to do the actual playing and use camera angles and editing tricks to make it look like the actor is performing. Or you can cast someone who can actually play and let them do it for real. School of Rock took the second option, and it worked because Jack Black is a genuinely accomplished musician. This is not an exaggeration made for the sake of a fun fact. The man has spent years as a legitimate performing artist. Tenacious D, the comedy rock duo he formed with Kyle Gass, requires real guitar chops, real stage presence, and real musical ability. Jack Black has all of that. So when you watch School of Rock and you see Dewey Finn wailing on a guitar, shredding through a solo, or hammering out chords during the Battle of the Bands, you are watching Jack Black actually do those things. The production did not rely on a double. They did not use sleight of hand editing. The camera shows you his hands on the frets because those are his hands, playing those notes, in real time. This matters more than people realize. When you watch a musician perform on screen and the performance is fake, something subtle but important is lost. There's a disconnect between the emotional reality of the moment and the physical reality of what's happening. When it's real, when the person you're watching is genuinely making that sound, something connects at a deeper level. That's why the musical performances in School of Rock feel so visceral. Because they are. Mike White is one of the most interesting writer-performers working in Hollywood. His screenwriting has always been marked by a very specific sensibility. Smart, slightly offbeat, deeply human, and willing to find comedy in genuine discomfort. He wrote School of Rock with that same sensibility, creating a script that was funny in ways that didn't rely on cheap tricks. But White didn't stop at writing. He cast himself in the film, taking on the role of Ned Schneebly, Dewey Finn's actual roommate and the real substitute teacher whose identity Dewey steals in order to get access to the school. Ned is, in almost every way, the complete opposite of Dewey. He's cautious. He's responsible. He follows rules. He is perpetually horrified by everything his roommate does and yet somehow unable to completely cut ties with him. The dynamic between Dewey and Ned is one of the film's great comic engines. Every time Ned appears, you feel the weight of responsible adulthood crashing against Dewey's beautiful, chaotic irresponsibility. And because Mike White both wrote those scenes and then performed them, there's a precision to the comedy that comes from a writer who knows exactly what is after and then delivers it himself. White's performance is understated and pitch-perfect. He doesn't try to match Jack Black's energy. That would be a losing battle. Instead, he plays the straight man with total commitment, and his discomfort and exasperation become funnier and funnier as the film goes on. It's a choice that required genuine self-awareness and craft, and it pays off every single time Ned is on screen. Jack Black did not simply invent Dewey Finn from nothing. When you are creating a character who is supposed to embody the spirit of rock and roll,